Hello everyone. Welcome to the OpIndia Podcast, RealityBytes, with me Nupur J Sharma. In the past couple of days, there have been two stories that have left me extremely worried, sad, and infuriated. One is that of the tragic and brutal murder of Ankita by Shahrukh, her stalker who was also forcing her to convert to Islam. While we were barely done mourning Ankita, news emerged that a Hindu man, Ankit, had been murdered by Irfan, Irshad, and Israr because he was dating their sister. While Ankita was murdered in Jharkhand, Ankit was murdered in Uttar Pradesh. Two Hindus, hundreds of miles apart, lost their lives to Islamic hate. And those who talk about human rights, dignity, freedom of religion, tolerance, have maintained a nonchalant silence. On 20th of August, Ankita Kumari breathed her last. Shahrukh Hussain had attacked Ankita on the 23rd of August. Through a window, he had doused her in petrol while she was sleeping and set her ablaze. He used to call her and harass her, and according to her father, had asked her to marry him and convert to Islam. When Ankita refused, it became the cause of her painful death. Ankita spoke from her deathbed about her own agony. In her first dying declaration, she spoke about how Shahrukh had threatened her with dire consequences just a night before the attack. She informed her father, but since it was too late in the night, her father asked her to go to sleep and that they would take care of it in the morning. That night, at 4 a.m., she was set ablaze. In the second video, she spoke about how Shahrukh's brother had threatened her. देखते हैं कौन जेल में ढुकाता है, जेल से निकलेंगे तो सबको देख लेंगे, he had said. He had also said that he would kill the girl, Ankita in this case, who had put him in jail. Shahrukh was harassing Ankita for the past 2 years. Interestingly, when Ankita's father had once decided to file a complaint, the same brother who had threatened Ankita with dire consequences after Shahrukh had set her on fire, he had apologized to Ankita's father in an attempt to save his brother. Ankita's father had then presumably decided to not file the FIR, and we know what the consequences are today. 5 days before Ankita passed away, she had recorded her testimony before the executive magistrate. This is right after she was set ablaze by Shahrukh. In her statement, she revealed how Shahrukh had tormented her to such an extent that she had even stopped going to school. She revealed that he had managed to get a phone number from one of her friends and had started calling her up incessantly. In fact, he used to also stone her house and had attempted to break in several times. He should die the way I'm dying today, Ankita had said in a dying declaration. That was her last wish. In Dumka, hundreds of Hindus took to the streets demanding justice for the Hindu girl. They also protested against the Dumka SDPO Noor Mustafa Ansari during the rally, accusing him of negligence and attempting to help Shahrukh Hussain. Ex-CM Marandi said that one Zulfikar, who had exploited tribals, had been booked under the SC/ST Act and was sent to jail once. Noor Mustafa allegedly did not file the charge sheet for 90 days. In the document shared by Marandi, this information is given along with the signature of the judge. On the basis of these documents, Zulfikar reportedly got bail. As per Marandi, DSP Noor Mustafa filed the charge sheet sometime after Zulfikar got out on bail. And this, of course, points towards him attempting to save certain accused. Former Chief Minister of Jharkhand and BJP leader Raghubar Das had said that Noor Mustafa had links to PFI. OpIndia could not verify this information independently, but one has to say that one wouldn't really be surprised if that was true. He also said that this incident has the tentacles of PFI. Again, we wouldn't really be surprised. Thankfully, DSP Noor Mustafa has now been suspended. While Hindus were mourning Ankita, news emerged that a Hindu boy, Ankit, had been murdered by Muslim men in Uttar Pradesh. He was strangled and thrown merely 100 meters away from his family home because the Muslim men were outraged about his relationship with their sister, Amina Khatun. The incident took place on August 26th, and the dead body of the Hindu boy was found the next day, on August 27th. On 26th, Ankit got a call from Amina's brother asking him to meet them. He never returned home. When his family went to her house to inquire about Ankit, the family of Amina Khatun basically said they had no idea where Ankit was. The brothers told us that they had no information about Ankit. We immediately started looking for him. In the wee hours of Saturday, we came to know from the villagers that the girl had died and the family was burying her body in the village. This is Ankit's elder brother's statement. They immediately then started looking for Ankit, and as I said before, they found him only 100 meters away from their house. 2 Hindu lives, in a matter of a couple of days, snuffed brutally by religious fanatics for whom a kafir's mere existence is an abomination. Beaten, strangled, tortured, forgotten. In Ankita's case, a media that is eager to mention the Hindu identity when Muslims are murdered remains spectacularly demure. Jilted lover burns woman. Woman set ablaze by lover. Woman killed by jilted lover accused arrested were some of the templatized headlines that we got to read by corporate media. Shahrukh's name was conspicuous by its absence. The entire corporate media ensured that his name appeared nowhere in the headline. Not only that, they even ensure that they don't mention that according to the father of the girl, Shahrukh was attempting to convert her to Islam. It appeared nowhere, absolutely nowhere. India Today, in fact, traveled to the depths of depravity when in their report they changed Shahrukh's name and called him Abhishek. The fact that they reverted to Shahrukh again after widespread outrage is immaterial. What made them do it in the first place? Clerical errors could perhaps make a journalist misspell Shahrukh's name or maybe call him Shehzad instead of Shahrukh. But what malaise leads to Shahrukh being called Abhishek? NDTV, that had once yelled in their headline, "Muslim man killed in Jharkhand, allegedly over love affair with a Hindu girl," wrote, "Jharkhand schoolgirl dies after stalker sets her on fire." Times of India, while reporting the murder of Ankit, wrote, "3 brothers arrested for killing sister's Dalit boyfriend in Uttar Pradesh." In the case of Ankita, it is rather evident that the corporate media could not give her the dignity of not being reduced to an innocuous headline that nobody would notice. The innocuous headlines only work to extend the victim card to a barbarian cult, and they didn't care. But in Ankit's case, the headline was far more problematic. First, Times of India mentioned the Dalit identity of Ankit prominently in their headline, and the name of the Muslim perpetrators was conspicuous by its absence. Given how the corporate media and the left establishment tries to widen the caste fault lines in the Hindu society, to an unsuspecting reader, it would appear as though the Dalit Hindu had been murdered by upper caste Hindus. Whether that was by design, I leave it up to you to decide. Of course, the corporate media would never want the world to know that it was indeed Muslims who had murdered a Dalit Hindu. What in the world would then happen to their Jai Meme, Jai Bhim trope then? One that is peddled to further a mythical alliance between Dalit Hindus and Muslims, one supposedly oppressed by upper caste Hindus and the other by majoritarian Hindutvavadis. It is often noticed that the caste identity of a Dalit victim is mentioned by the media and the left while reporting the crime. The non-left has theorized that this is perhaps to drive a wedge in the society and further the narrative that in Hindu-majority India, Dalits and lower caste individuals are brutalized on a regular basis and therefore further the Muslim-Dalit unity trope that would then help secular fronts electorally. While that may be the agenda for several media houses and left intelligentsia, the rationale behind highlighting the caste identity of the Dalit victim has a separate origin altogether. The theory essentially believes that the victim would have been at a lower risk had her identity not been that of a Dalit, and hence mentioning her caste identity is essential, as even if the crime is not motivated by caste animosity, the victim was at a higher risk by virtue of her caste. In this case, Times of India could potentially believe that Ankit was at a greater risk of violence because his Dalit identity, and therefore mentioning his Dalit identity was of paramount importance. However, we must critically analyze these crimes to understand which identity of Ankit made him vulnerable to being murdered by these Muslim men. Irshad, Israr, and Irfan murdered Ankit because he was in a relationship with their sister Amina Khatun. The question that we need to ask ourselves is simple. Would Ankit be spared his fate if he was, say, a Brahmin instead of a Dalit? If not, what was that primary identity due to which the Muslim men decided to murder Ankit? The truth is that for the Muslim men, it was Ankit's Hindu identity that was the cause of their religious hate. And it was his Hindu identity that put him at risk the moment he started dating Amina Khatun. His caste identity would not put him at risk or save him from the crime. So he was not particularly murdered for being a Dalit, since we understand by precedent that he would not have been spared had he been a Brahmin. Therefore, the fact that Times of India mentions his Dalit identity instead of his Hindu identity is only a testament to the fact that the media either deliberately ignores ground realities to peddle a set narrative, or they are woefully unaware of the reality of Islamist crimes. When we talk about religious identities, one must also acknowledge in no uncertain terms that Hindus and Muslims have been coexisting in India, but the historicity of that relationship is strained and blood-soaked at the very least. Hindus have seen over 800 years of Islamic rule where they were beaten, raped, killed, and converted, where their temples were trampled upon and their identity as a Hindu was under siege. Post the Islamic rule in independent India, the atrocities committed by Islamists have not stopped, whether the left likes to believe it or not. Hindus have been historically in a disadvantaged position with respect to Muslims in India and have often been victimized brutally so by Muslims. Therefore, a Hindu man, regardless of his caste, is at a greater risk of violence when the perpetrator is a Muslim and is oppressed because of his Hindu identity, not his Dalit identity. I often say every day I feel like we are documenting our own end. Ankita and Ankit have been lost forever. Their families have been devastated forever. They will be reduced to names that Hindus will forget and the left will vilify. They will become names that Muslims would use to say that they are the real victims because the perpetrators, who don't follow real Islam, by the way, brought shame to a peaceful community that is victimized by the very Hindus who are now demanding justice for their sons and daughters hacked by Muslims. Through this series, let us remember the ones we lose along the way. The ones hacked, the ones raped, the ones subjugated, the ones suppressed, erased by jihadists. Let us not forget.